Okay, hello again. We're going to be continuing to talk about writing for the web, and a lot of this will have to do with social media as we talk this time. A good question to ask, and this is always a good question to ask anytime you're doing anything in media, is what is our purpose in doing it? And in particular, we're concerned with how an audience will receive what we're doing, whether it's something that is written and read or viewed as a video or whatever it might be. We want to give value to the audience so that they will return and become regular viewers or readers or listeners or whatever it might be. And in social media, we're really ideally trying to interact. We hope to get a relationship going with the audience. So I'm linking to this article here. It says marketing and advertising through social media can be quite easy when you know what users are looking for. Customers don't want to just buy a product anymore. Customers want to buy a lifestyle, and they want to know everything about the product before purchasing. With this in mind, it's important to interact and participate with the potential customer. The big mistake that businesses make when using social media is that they only throw information on the users without any interaction. Throwing tons of information on social media doesn't work. People might read it, but they definitely won't remember it or tell other people about it, which is important. With interaction, participation, and passion in your internet platforms, you will attract and capture your users. So with social media, you are looking for, very much so, for interaction. I'll show you, I've told you I do a program with KETR radio called the Blacklands Cafe. This is a Monday through Friday morning program, and created a Facebook page for that. And had a fair amount of success in posting podcasts on the Facebook page, and then asking questions. So this was a program that we did, a podcast that we had about planting trees year-round, and how do you do that, and what's the best way to do it. And we talked with about a monthly basis with a fella who's a Hunt County master gardener, so he knows everything about gardening. So what question might you ask? And the question should always be simple. And I've had in the past, I've used to think, be clever, think of something original. Usually that will not be so good. So come up with something that's not necessarily specifically about that particular item, but is just related to that item. So on this particular Facebook post, the question was, what are your favorite Northeast Texas trees? Coffee for a moment. What are your favorite Northeast Texas trees? And we had a couple of comments on that from people, and we're trying again to establish kind of a friendship, a relationship with these folks. We had the mayor of Commerce, and we didn't really get much in the way of response to this, but I see we got at least one. Pardon me. So Commerce was about to attract a new industry to open in a building that's been empty for a long time. So I could ask, well, what do you think about the new industry coming to Commerce? And somebody will say, well, that's nice. But the question then was always a question with the post. What encourages industries to locate in Northeast Texas towns? We're trying to get a conversation going. So one of the answers there was, in my experience of watching for most of my adult life, tax abatements, says Cato Metter. So that's not necessarily the best example in the world of use of Facebook and social media, but it's one that I'm familiar with and one that I could talk about. knowledgeably. But you're always asking a question, and I say ask a fairly simple question that everyone could easily respond to. Writing tips for social media. Here's a nice video on social media writing.
This is a 45-second demo of how to do a mail merge with Google Sheets and Gmail. I have my spreadsheet here with a column of email.
Writing for social media can be tricky, but the good news is it can actually be easier than traditional writing with a few little tricks. I'm going to show you 5 social media writing tricks today. And I'll tell you, I don't want to call the 5th one controversial necessarily, but it is one that I'm currently fighting with a client about. Let's get into it. Welcome back to 5-Minute Social Media, where I teach you how to do the best possible social media in the least amount of time. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you. If you haven't taken a second to subscribe, please do so. Subscribe down below the video here. So, social media writing, it's its own special art. And I've got 5 tips to show you today. Let me ask you this. Have you ever watched somebody scrolling through their social media feed? I mean, you know how you do it, but it's even more amazing if you're standing on a bus or a subway or something, you can watch other people do it. I mean, they are flying. And so if they're even going to have a chance of reading the words that you wrote, they've got to be written in a certain way. So this is social media writing techniques, but really writing for scrollers or skimmers so you can actually get their attention before they're on to the next thing. By the end of this video, you'll be able to write better to catch people's attention. These techniques are a combination of common sense and years of practicing writing for different brands and types of clients on different social media networks. In my opinion, overall, writing on social media is much more casual compared to like Oxford style, or you may have heard the term AP style of writing. That being said, grammar, spelling, still very important. No one's going to take you seriously or hire you if you don't even have the basics down. Before I get into the 5 tips, a few things to consider. Things are going to be different from brand to brand. For example, if you're a fast food chicken place, you might write, "Want to get a bite of this chicken?" or "Want to take a bite of this chicken?" Meanwhile, a law office is always going to write "want to." They're never going to write "wanna." Also, generally when you're writing for social media, you want to get the most information out in the fewest amount of words. A phrase I learned years ago, dazzle with brevity. I love it because that phrase says so much in 3 words, and that's what you're trying to do with social media writing. Catch their attention, get your point across, and move on. Sometimes I will write longer things and then go back and shorten it, and if that works for you, you can try that as well. So 5 tips, 5 social media writing techniques. Let's get into them. Tip number 1, never write out numbers in social media. You're, again, trying to get people's attention, and the more long words they see in a post, the harder it is for them to grasp before they've scrolled on. So never write E-I-G-H-T, just write the number 8. Tip number 2, capitalize the important words. We don't have the benefit of italics or bold in social media, so you have to find other ways to make certain words stand out. And by the way, when I say capitalize, I mean just the first letter of the word. I don't mean all caps, as you know, that is associated with yelling, and that is definitely going to drive people away. Tip number 3, tag other accounts and use hashtags just for emphasis. We were talking about how we don't have the ability to use bold and italics the way we would on a blog post, but if you tag somebody on the social networks or if you hashtag something, they will show up in a different color. Of course, use common sense and use it sparingly. If you make super long hashtags, they become even harder to read.
I'm gonna pause him there. He's moving through there very fast, which is good. And of course, that's the nature of social media. But you may want to go back and watch the rest of that because really he has a lot of excellent suggestions. Also, here's an article. I'm not going to read this line by line, of course, but we'll kind of scroll through it. Use your casual voice in writing for social media. Here is where there is a good deal of difference. And we were talking about the fact that if you're writing a news story for a television website, that it really is quite similar to print style journalism. And the same would be true for a radio website. But when we're writing for social media, really there is a good deal of difference in that sort of writing and more formal media writing, more traditional media writing. So use your casual voice. I'm not going to get into this word by word. Keep it short and simple. He's already mentioned that. Think CTA, call to action, is something you need to be aware of every time you write for your brand. Again, a lot of this has to do with doing this for business purposes, promoting a brand, promoting the sales of a particular product or service. So call to action. Does that mean you need to be constantly promotional? No, but you do want your fans to take action, don't you? So encouraging people to take action and ultimately buy the product. Keep it personal. Use of I, me, you is good. The Beatles, in their early days, were famous for writing songs with personal pronouns. I want to hold your hand. Love me do. Please, please me, and so on. And they did that quite consciously. Research pays off, so the more knowledge you have about your audience, the better. So the more you know, the more valuable what you write can be. Break some punctuation rules, which I would not encourage in traditional media writing. You notice he did say in that video, though, is get the spelling right. Sloppy spelling is unprofessional, and it will not reflect well on whatever organization you are representing, so get the spelling right, without a doubt. Be careful of spelling and grammar. Make regular, frequent uploads with social media. You can't do this. I see a Facebook page, sometimes nobody's posted in a month. Well, nobody's waiting for the next post, you see. So you have to be frequent and certainly daily. But you can't let it sit there inactive for days and weeks on end. Ask simple questions. I've already mentioned that. Do ask questions, but ask simple questions. Be positive. We've talked about that. Negativity. There's a lot of negativity in the world. It doesn't necessarily, it may resonate with people who think just like you do, but that's fairly narrow band there. So keep it positive. Good examples of using social media. I'm not going to spend much time on this. I'm just going to show you that it's here. And if you're really interested in this subject, and I think a lot of you probably are, you can scroll through this 10 successful Facebook marketing examples. Again, a lot of this now, the use of social media is, of course, it is media, but it is media for the purpose of marketing and promoting a brand or a product or a company. So here's Qatar Airways, Dove, the I want to say soap, but they've always said we're not a soap, we're a beauty bar. But women's beauty products, they also make products for men, and they've done some phenomenal marketing things in recent years. Oreo, we all know Oreos, and so there's an example of what Oreo has done. So go through that, look at that page, and I think you'll find some interesting things there and probably learn a good deal from it. Lateral reporting. Web reporting is not limited to prose or text. The web lets us think laterally about what information the reader needs or wants. This is where we create links, and we link to other articles. Now, one thing that is good if you're in an organization that produces a lot of information, a lot of stories, a lot of content, it's always good to link to your own articles. For example, if you go to the National Public Radio website, you will see a lot of links to other NPR articles. Or if you go to the Dallas Morning News, you'll see a lot of links to other Dallas Morning News articles. Now, it is legal to link to other sites, but you may prefer to link to items from your own organization. So let's have a look at this article here, linking to other websites. By and large, linking to other websites is okay. Most often, a website will connect to another in the form of a link, also known as a hypertext link, a specially coded word or image that, when clicked upon, will take a user to another web page. You do not need permission on a regular word link to another website's home page. So it is generally agreed that deep linking, a link that bypasses a website's home page, is not copyright infringement. After all, the author of a novel can't prevent readers from skipping to the end first if they so desire. So here they're talking about linking to some page within another organization's link. Now, framing is another thing. Framing is where you make it look like you link to some other organization's story or what have you, but you make it look like it's yours. Framing, what makes framing different is that instead of taking the user to the link site, the information from that website is imported into the original page and displayed in a special frame that makes it look as if it's your story. So framing is generally unpopular with websites whose content is framed on another site, unless they have agreed to do it. Websites that frame the content of other sites are often seen as stealing the other site's content. One court found framing to be a copyright infringement because the process resulted in unauthorized modification of the linked site. So a framer is more likely to be found liable for copyright or trademark infringement if copyrighted material is modified without authorization or if customers are confused about the association between the two sites. So I would stay away from framing, but by and large, linking is not a problem. Fair use, this comes up a lot. Here's the definition, one definition, and this by no means covers the whole thing. A legal doctrine that portions of copyrighted materials may be used without permission of the copyright owner, provided the use is fair and reasonable, does not substantially impair the value of the materials, and does not curtail the profits reasonably expected by the owner. Having said that, there's a lot more to it than that. I'm not going to show you the whole thing, but I'm going to show you the first minute or two here of a video on fair use. It's something we need to give a lot of attention to.
Hi, I'm Sari, here to answer your copyright questions. Today's topic is fair use. First, what is fair use? Fair use allows you to reuse copyright-protected material under certain circumstances without getting permission from the copyright owner. Fair use is an exception to copyright law and is not determined by YouTube. Let me say that again. YouTube does not decide what is fair use and what isn't. Only the court can do that. What counts as fair use? Different countries have different rules about when it's okay to use material without the copyright owner's permission. In some countries, it's not even called fair use. For example, in the UK, it's referred to as fair dealing. Aside from what your country calls it, courts usually focus on whether your use of another person's song or video is transformative. Basically, they're asking if you added new expression or meaning to the original work, or if it basically copies the original. For example, in the US, content that might be considered fair use includes commentary, criticism, or news reporting. Also, keep in mind that just because you say something's fair use, give credit to the copyright owner, or add a disclaimer like no infringement intended, it does not mean that you're protected.
Okay, I'm going to pause her there. What she said about transformative is important. Did you change? In other words, did you add value in some way to what you borrowed, the small portion of what you borrowed? And if you did, then that gives you more of a claim to use that particular thing. So again, listen to what she had to say here.
Video is transformative. Basically, they're asking if you added new expression or meaning to the original work, or if it basically copies the original. For example, in the US, content that might be considered fair use includes commentary, criticism, or news reporting.
So if you're taking a clip from something and you're commenting on it, or providing a critique or reporting on it, then that would be, in all likelihood, considered fair use. It's a little dicey in that, as she says, this kind of depends on what the court may say in a given case. So we need to be careful about fair use. We do have an advantage in education when you all are using something for a student project. Using something for educational purposes generally is considered something that allows it to be fair use, but again, you can't always be sure. Pictures, we have to be very careful about using photographs. Just any photo you find on the web, doing a Google search is not okay for you to use. So again, let me show you part of a video here on that subject.
Hello, Amber Vilhauer here, your online business development expert. And during today's 4-minute fast track video, we're going to be talking about what is okay and what is definitely not okay when it comes to using images online. Because we all like adding neat little images to our social media or adding images to our content pages inside of our website, especially our blog, or using them on our email marketing. But the question is, do you own the rights to use those photos? Because if not, if you use a photo illegally, then you can get fined up to $1,500 per image, depending on who took that photo and what their copyright and privacy terms are. So you have to be really careful when it comes to using images online, which is why I wanted to talk about this today.
I'm going to pause her there, trying to save a bit of time. This is about a 4-minute video, and I hope you will watch the whole thing because what she has to say is very, very good. I also have an article here that is on this subject, and we can kind of scan through this article a bit. Covers some things that are useful. Again, this covers fair use. Fair use of a copyrighted work, including such use by reproduction in copies for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, including multiple copies for classroom use, scholarship, or research. So that sort of expands the definition that we talked about there. Giving credit alone is not enough to save you from a lawsuit or save you from being hit with a bill for the use of a photo. Again, someone takes a photo, that is their creative work, and they have a right to that work. There are people who make their living taking and selling photographs. We can't just take that anytime we wish to make use of that photograph. Get permission. That's not easy for students to do. It's if your job is working in social media and you have 8 hours a day to devote to it, and you're working ahead several days or weeks on a project, then it's more practical to do that. But you can ask for permission. Take your own photos is certainly very good advice. If you take the photos, then you can use them. Public domain libraries. I'm going to come to that in a minute. That's a very valuable thing, and I'll give you some places to look for photos where the photograph is in what is called the public domain. In other words, it is okay to use. It's okay for anyone to use. Stock photos, there are places that sell photos. It says, yes, sometimes they are cheesy, but you can generally find what you need for just a few dollars for one photo. So stock photos are taken to represent almost anything and everything that you can imagine, and you can buy them and not pay a tremendous amount of money. So there are some sites called, one is Creative Commons, which is good to use, and you can search Creative Commons baseball. Interesting how that comes up first thing in my mind. There's some photos that potentially you could use. Now let's look at this one. When I see that line right there, that tells me that this should be okay. CC by SA 2.0 license. That tells me that should be okay to use. Just about anything I want to use. I don't like that Ticket Club Premier, however, because that's so specific. I would rather have that one, kind of a scuffed up looking baseball, and that again has the CC by SA 2.0 license. And we look at that, and it says you are free to share, copy, and redistribute the material in any medium or format, adapt, remix, transform, and build upon the material for any purpose, even commercially. So again, this is the Creative Commons website, and I recommend that. It's again, just be sure you're looking for that license. Also, there's something called Public Domain Pictures, which is similar, and you do a search. But again, check the license on these photos. Publicdomainpictures.net. and make sure that you're going to be okay using that photograph. Give credit, even with Creative Commons. Give credit for a photo with a line under the photo, credit, and the name. And each one of these photos will always have the name of the photographer, and it may be kind of a made-up name. It may not be, Bill Jones or something, but some kind of name. And then Creative Commons. So go ahead and give the name. I like to go ahead and put the license, the indication of the license in there, so to make it clear that I'm using it under that particular license. You want to include graphics, especially, and we're talking about here, what can you add to your blog post or whatever it is, article that you're doing online. This is not necessarily just in social media. Graphics, especially for numerical information that help people conceive of something that has a lot of numbers in it, whether it's to do with money or whatever it might be. Maps are very helpful. Again, you need to be careful about where you're getting some of these things. Wikimedia Commons is another good source of items that you might check. Audio, video clips, and I may have skipped it, but there is a video out there, I'm sure there's several, on using YouTube videos. And again, if you do the YouTube search through Creative Commons, that is helpful. You can find YouTube videos that are licensed under Creative Commons, which I showed you a few moments ago. And that's a good idea, but certainly using audio and video clips within your thing that you are writing, blog or what have you, is great. Comments and discussion forums are good. Again, you're hoping to get people to participate in and become a participant in what you're writing, and if you do that, then they're going to have a greater identification with you and be much more likely to be a regular user and a supporter of whatever organization it is that you're promoting. Okay, over time here, so we'll let it go at that, and thanks. We'll see you next time.